The claiming right was where broken wolves were discarded. And as Revna sat among the damaged, the barren, and the disgraced, she kept her gaze fixed on the stone floor beneath her motionless legs. She could feel them watching her. The whispers slithered through the great hall like smoke. The crippled one can't even stand for her own presentation. What alpha would burden himself with that? They weren't wrong to wonder. Revna had been carried onto the platform by two servants who had refused to meet her eyes. Her legs hung limp beneath the thin fabric of her gown, a constant reminder of everything she had lost 3 winters ago. She had stopped hoping long before today. If no one claimed her by moonrise, her father would finally have what he wanted: permission to send her to the labor camps in the northern mountains. There, wolves like her, useless, unwanted, were worked until their bodies gave out entirely. At least then, she thought bitterly, she wouldn't feel the cold. But then the doors exploded open, and when the Alpha King of Valdrin walked into the hall, when his gaze swept across every woman on that platform and stopped, impossibly, inexplicably, on her, Revna understood that fate had not forgotten her after all. It had simply been waiting to destroy her in a different way. The great hall of Thornwick Hold had seen celebrations and condemnations in equal measure. Tonight, it served as a marketplace. Revna had counted 17 women on the platform before she stopped. Counting felt too much like hoping, and hope had no place here. The claiming right existed for wolves who had failed at everything else, failed to find mates during the proper seasons, failed to bear children, failed to be beautiful or whole or useful enough to warrant traditional courtship. She had failed at all of it. The wooden chair beneath her creaked as she shifted, trying to find a position that didn't make her spine ache. Her father had refused to let her use the cushioned chair from home. "You'll look pitiful enough without appearing comfortable," he had said, as if comfort had ever been her concern. Around her, the other women stood in careful arrangements designed to highlight their remaining value. A widow with wide hips that promised fertility. A she-wolf whose family had fallen from grace, but whose bloodline still carried weight. A scarred warrior who could no longer fight, but could still breed strong pups. And then there was Revna, sitting while everyone else stood. A broken thing among the merely damaged. Perhaps someone will take her as a servant, she heard a noblewoman murmur from the crowd below. Surely she can still use her hands. Revna's fingers curled into fists beneath the thin blanket covering her legs. 3 winters ago, she had been able to dance. 3 winters ago, she had run through the forests of the Ashvane territory, with her wolf singing in her blood. 3 winters ago, she had been promised to a minor lord's son who had looked at her like she contained the moon. Then came the accident. The fall that wasn't a fall. The healer who had tried so desperately to save her, but had only managed to keep her alive. Now her wolf was silent. Her legs were dead. And the man who had promised to love her had vanished like morning frost. She had a half-sister somewhere. Marin, born before her father's remarriage, kept isolated for reasons no one would explain. Another loss. Another absence. The auctioneer droned on, his voice carrying the bored efficiency of a man performing a tedious duty. Next, we have... The doors did not open. They shattered. Both oak panels flew inward with enough force to crack the stone walls on either side. The wind that rushed through carried the scent of pine and iron and something else. Something that made every wolf in the hall drop their eyes to the floor. Alpha presence. Not ordinary dominance. This was the kind of power that existed in bloodlines so ancient they predated the kingdoms themselves. Revna's breath caught in her chest. She had heard stories of the Alpha King of Valdrin. Everyone had. They said Calder Vorn had inherited his throne at 19 after his entire family perished in a single night. They said his wolf was so powerful it had driven 3 challengers mad before they could even shift. They said he was beautiful in the way that glaciers were beautiful, cold, merciless, and capable of crushing everything in their path. The stories had not prepared her for the reality. He was tall enough that the doorframe barely cleared his head. His hair was dark as a moonless night, cropped short in the military fashion of the Northern Territories. His jaw could have been carved from the mountains themselves, but it was his eyes that made Revna's heart stutter. They were pale, almost colorless, like ice over deep water, concealing depths that promised drowning. Those eyes swept across the platform, dismissing each woman with a glance: the widow, the disgraced noblewoman, the scarred warrior. His expression revealed nothing. Not interest, not disgust, not even boredom, just cold assessment. Then his gaze reached Revna and stopped. For 3 heartbeats, neither of them moved. She could not look away. Something in those frozen eyes had locked onto her, pinning her in place more effectively than her dead limbs ever could. "Your Majesty." The auctioneer stumbled over his words, his face gone pale. "We are deeply honored by your presence. If you would allow me to present our finest candidates?" "No need." His voice matched everything else about him. Deep, cold, final. The Alpha King walked forward, and the crowd parted before him like water before a blade. He passed the widow without a glance, past the noblewoman, past the warrior. He stopped directly in front of Revna's chair. Up close, she could see the faint scars on his knuckles, the way his chest rose and fell with controlled precision, the almost imperceptible tension in his jaw, as if he were clenching his teeth against something she couldn't see. He was looking at her legs, at the thin blanket that did nothing to hide their stillness. "This one," he said. The hall went silent. "Your Majesty." Her father lurched forward, his face a mask of poorly hidden alarm. "Surely you've been misinformed about her condition. She cannot walk. She cannot shift. She is—" "I am aware." Caldervorn did not look at her father. He was still watching her, those frost-gray eyes searching for something she didn't understand. "She is damaged goods," her father pressed. "I would not have your Majesty burdened with—" I said. The temperature in the hall dropped. Literally dropped. Revna could see her breath misting in the air. "I am aware." Her father fell silent, fear bleeding through his scent. The Alpha King turned his attention back to Revna. For one impossible moment, something flickered in those frozen depths. Not warmth, exactly, but recognition. As if he had been looking for her specifically. As if he had known she would be here. "Can you feel them?" he asked quietly. "Your legs." Revna's throat tightened. "No, Your Majesty." He nodded once. Then, without warning, he bent down and lifted her from the chair. She gasped. His arms were solid as iron beneath her, one hooked under her knees, the other supporting her back. He held her as if she weighed nothing, as if carrying a broken woman before the entire assembly was the most natural thing in the world. "I'm taking her," he announced. And as chaos erupted behind them, as her father sputtered protests and the crowd dissolved into shocked whispers, Revna stared up at the face of the Alpha King and wondered what kind of monster she had just been claimed by. The carriage moved through the night like a ship through dark waters. Revna sat propped against velvet cushions, her legs arranged carefully by servants who had appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. Through the small window, she watched the familiar landscape of Ashvane territory disappear behind them, replaced by dense forests and jagged peaks she had only seen in maps. Valdrin, the Northern Kingdom. A land of ice and stone where wolves were said to be more beast than civilized. She was going to be queen of it. The absurdity almost made her laugh. Almost. The Alpha King sat across from her, silent as a tomb. He had not spoken since lifting her from the platform, had not explained why he had chosen her, had not even looked at her, his gaze fixed on the darkness beyond the window as if he could see something in it that she couldn't. Revna studied him in the flickering lamplight, Up close, with time to observe, she noticed things she had missed before. The shadows beneath his eyes, dark as bruises. The faint tremor in his hands that he controlled with visible effort. The way he kept his breathing shallow and measured, as if deeper breaths caused him pain. Something was wrong with him. Something beyond mere coldness. "You're staring." His voice made her jump. He still hadn't turned from the window. "Forgive me, Your Majesty," she managed. "I was simply wondering why." "Why what?" "Why me?" The words came out harder than she intended. "You could have chosen any woman in that hall. Whole women. Women who can walk. Women who can give you heirs without... Without what?" Now he did turn, that winter stare fixing on her with unsettling intensity. "Without complication? Without inconvenience?" Revna's chin lifted despite herself. "Without a chair." For a long moment he said nothing. Then, impossibly, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but something close to it. "I don't need a woman who can walk," he said quietly. "I need a woman who won't love me." The words hung between them, strange and heavy. "Your Majesty, you will be my queen." He said it like a fact, not a question. "You will have every comfort, every luxury, and every protection I can provide. You will want for nothing. In return, you will give me heirs. And when that duty is fulfilled, we will live entirely separate lives." Revna blinked. "You want a broodmare. I want an arrangement." He leaned forward slightly, and she caught a flash of something desperate beneath the ice. One without sentiment, without attachment, without love. "Why?" His jaw tightened. "Because love will kill me." Before she could respond, the carriage lurched. Revna's body pitched sideways, her unresponsive legs failing to brace her. She would have fallen if Calder hadn't moved, faster than she could track, catching her shoulders and steadying her against the seat. His hands were cold, shockingly cold, even through the fabric of her dress. "Your hands," she whispered. "They're like ice." He withdrew immediately, retreating to his side of the carriage, but not before she saw it. The flash of shame in his eyes. The flicker of something wounded. "A family condition," he said flatly. "Nothing more." Revna knew a lie when she heard one, but she also knew better than to push a king. The carriage continued through the darkness, and when the fortress of Valdren finally rose before them, a massive structure of black stone and frost-covered towers, Revna understood that she was entering a cage far more complex than the one she had left. The only question was whether this cage would keep her safe or crush her entirely. The throne room of Valdren was a cathedral of ice. Massive pillars of white stone rose toward a vaulted ceiling that seemed to disappear into shadow. Enormous windows lined the walls, but instead of letting in warmth, they framed a landscape of eternal winter. Snow-covered mountains, frozen rivers, forests of evergreens bowed under the weight of frost. Revna had been dressed by a team of silent servants in a gown of deep emerald that made her feel like an imposter. They had arranged her in a wheeled chair lined with white fur, positioning her beside the throne where the Alpha King sat, in cold, perfect stillness. The nobles had gathered to witness the contract signing. Dozens of them, dressed in furs and jewels, watching her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to naked contempt. "She can't even stand for her own binding," someone whispered. "Perhaps he's lost his mind, the curse finally taking hold." "What curse?" "Shh, not here." Revna filed that away, the mention of a curse, but kept her expression neutral. 3 winters of being pitied and scorned had taught her how to wear a mask. The officiant stepped forward, an elderly wolf with ceremonial robes, and a voice like cracking ice. "We are gathered to witness the binding of Calder Vorn, Alpha King of Valdren, to the woman Revna of Ashvain. The terms have been agreed upon. The contracts have been prepared." He turned to Calder. "Your Majesty, do you accept this woman as your bound mate? Your queen? The vessel of your heirs? I do. And do you, Revna of Ashvain, accept this man as your bound mate, your king, the sire of your children? Revna's throat tightened. This was it. The moment that would seal her fate forever. I do. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The officiant continued, listing the terms of the contract, her duties, her privileges, the expectations placed upon her. Revna barely heard any of it. She was too aware of Calder beside her, radiating that unnatural chill like a man carved from winter itself. If there are any who object to this binding, the officiant intoned, speak now, or, I object. The voice cut through the hall like a blade. Revna's blood turned to ice. Real ice, not the metaphorical kind she had grown accustomed to. She knew that voice. Had heard it every day for 3 winters, dripping with false concern and hidden malice. Seraphine. Her stepsister emerged from the crowd, beautiful as a poisoned flower. Her hair was the color of summer wheat, her eyes the deep blue of a winter sky. She moved with the fluid grace of a woman who had never known a moment of imperfection in her life. The woman who had been engaged to the man Revna was supposed to marry before the accident had taken everything. Forgive my interruption, Your Majesty, Seraphine said, her voice dripping with rehearsed humility. But I could not in good conscience allow this binding to proceed without warning you. Calder's expression did not change. Warning me of what? Of what she is. Seraphine's eyes found Revna's, and the hatred in them was barely concealed. Of what she's hiding beneath that pretty gown and pitiful chair. Revna's heart hammered against her ribs. Seraphine, don't. She wasn't always crippled, Your Majesty, Seraphine continued, ignoring her. 3 winters ago, she was whole, strong, promised to a good man who loved her. A dramatic pause. Until the accident that broke her legs and killed her wolf. Whispers exploded through the crowd. But here's what no one knows. Seraphine stepped closer, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. The healers who treated her, they found something in her blood. Something that shouldn't be there. A binding seal. The kind used to cage dangerous magic. Revna's blood ran cold. How did Seraphine know about the seal? Only the healer had been present when, unless her mother had told her. Unless this had been planned from the beginning. The temperature in the room dropped sharply. Revna saw frost spreading across the nearest windows. That is enough, Calder said quietly, but Seraphine wasn't finished. Ask her, Your Majesty. Ask her why she really can't walk. Ask her what the seal is holding back. Ask her. I said. The frost spread further, climbing the walls, coating the floor. Several nobles stepped backward in alarm. That is enough. Seraphine finally fell silent, but the damage was done. Every eye in the hall was fixed on Revna now, filled with suspicion and fear. Calder turned to look at her. His expression was unreadable, but something flickered in those colorless eyes. Something that might have been recognition. Is it true? He asked quietly. Is there a seal on you? Revna's hands trembled in her lap. She wanted to lie. Every instinct screamed at her to deny it, to protect herself, to survive. But something in his gaze stopped her. A strange understanding, as if he already knew the answer. Yes, she whispered, but I don't know what it's holding back. I swear to you, I don't know what I am. The hall held its breath. Calder studied her for a long moment. Then he turned back to the officiant, his voice carrying absolute command. Continue the binding. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Seraphine's face twisted with disbelief. Your Majesty, you can't possibly... This woman will be my queen. Calder's voice brooked no argument. Anyone who objects can take their concerns to my dungeons. The officiant, pale but obedient, continued the ceremony with shaking hands. When it was done, When the contracts were signed and the binding words spoken, Calder rose from his throne and turned to face the assembled nobles. "You have witnessed the binding," he announced. "Revna of Ashvane is now your queen. You will show her the respect her position demands, or you will answer to me." Then he bent down, lifted Revna from her chair, and carried her from the throne room without another word. Behind them, Seraphine stood frozen among the stunned crowd, and as Revna pressed against the cold chest of her new husband, feeling the unnatural frost that seemed to live inside him, she heard her stepsister's final words echoing in her mind. "When he discovers what you really are, he'll destroy you both." The queen's chambers were a prison wrapped in silk. Revna had been installed in a suite of rooms larger than her father's entire house. Tapestries depicting ancient wolf hunts covered the walls. A fireplace tall enough for a grown man to stand in dominated one corner, flames crackling against the perpetual cold that seeped through the stone. The bed was a massive structure of carved mahogany draped in furs so soft they felt like clouds against her skin. And yet, she could not leave. Not because anyone had forbidden it, but because the corridors of Valdrin were built for wolves who could walk, who could run, who could climb the endless stairs that connected tower to tower. Her wheeled chair was useless here. She was as trapped as she had ever been. 3 days had passed since the binding ceremony. 3 days since Calder had carried her to these rooms, set her gently on the bed, and left without a word. 3 days of silence, of waiting, of wondering when her new husband would come to claim what the contract entitled him to. Her body, her womb, the heirs he needed. On the 4th night, he finally came. The knock was soft, softer than she expected from a man of his size. Revna straightened against the pillows, her heart beginning to race. "Enter." The door swung open, and Calder stepped inside. He looked different in the firelight. Less like a king, and more like a man carrying weight he couldn't set down. His formal clothes had been replaced by a simple white shirt, unlaced at the throat, and dark trousers that emphasized the lean power of his frame. His feet were bare against the stone floor. Bare feet. Something about that detail made him seem almost vulnerable. "I apologize for the delay," he said, closing the door behind him. "There were matters that required my attention." "You don't owe me explanations, Your Majesty." "Calder." He crossed the room slowly, giving her time to adjust to his presence. "When we're alone, I would prefer you use my name." Revna swallowed. Calder. The word felt strange on her tongue, intimate in a way she hadn't expected. He stopped at the edge of the bed, looking down at her with those unreadable winter eyes. The fire cast shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp angles of his cheekbones, the firm line of his jaw. "I know what was agreed upon," he said quietly. "The contract, the heirs. I know what you're expecting tonight." Revna's fingers curled into the furs beneath her. "I'm prepared to fulfill my duties." Something flickered in his expression. Pain, perhaps, or disappointment. "That isn't what I want." She blinked. "I don't understand." Calder sat on the edge of the bed, not close enough to touch her, but close enough that she could feel the chill bleeding from his skin. That unnatural cold that seemed to live inside him. "I want you to understand something," he said. "When this happens, and it will happen, eventually, it won't be because of duty. It won't be because of contracts or obligations or the expectations of my court." His eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw something beneath the ice. Something raw, and desperate, and achingly human. "When I come to you, Revna, it will be because you want me to. Not before." The words landed like stones dropped into still water, sending ripples through everything she thought she knew. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you care what I want? I'm just... Don't." His voice was sharp enough to cut. "Don't tell me what you are. I know what you are." "Do you?" The bitterness crept out before she could stop it. I'm a crippled woman, with a seal on her blood, and no memory of what put it there. I'm damaged goods, just like everyone says. So why? Because I know what it feels like. The admission hung between them, heavy with meaning she didn't fully understand. Calder looked away, his jaw tightening. I know what it feels like to be broken, to have something sealed inside you that you can't control, to be treated as less than whole by people who have never understood what it costs to survive. Revna's breath caught. The curse, the one they whispered about at the ceremony. His silence was answer enough. What is it? She pressed. What's wrong with you? For a long moment, he didn't respond. Then he reached out, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and took her hand in his. His skin was ice, genuinely, painfully cold, as if he had been holding snow for hours. But beneath the chill, she could feel his pulse, steady, strong, alive. There are things I cannot tell you yet, he said quietly. Things that would put you in danger if you knew them too soon. But I will tell you this. He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. The cold of his mouth sent shivers racing up her arm. I did not choose you because you were broken, Revna. I chose you because you survived. The firelight danced across his features as he lowered her hand, still holding it gently in his frozen grip. Now, I'm going to stay with you tonight. Not to claim you. Not yet. But because the court is watching, and they need to believe this marriage is real. He paused, something almost vulnerable crossing his face. And because I don't want to be alone. Revna should have been afraid, should have been suspicious, should have demanded answers about the curse, about the cold, about why a king who could have anyone had chosen a woman who couldn't walk. Instead, she shifted on the bed, making room for him beside her. Then stay. The surprise in his eyes was worth every question she didn't ask. Calder settled beside her, careful not to touch her legs, careful to maintain a respectful distance. But when Revna shivered from the cold emanating from his body, he pulled one of the furs over both of them. I run cold, he murmured. I should have warned you. I noticed. Another almost smile. Most people flinch when they touch me. I'm not most people. No. His pale gaze studied her face in the firelight. You're not. They lay in silence for a while, the fire crackling, the wind howling outside the frosted windows. Revna found herself watching the rise and fall of his chest, the way his breathing stayed carefully controlled even in rest. Can I ask you something? She said finally. You can ask. I may not answer. The cold? Has it always been like this? His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. No, it started 5 winters ago, the night my family died. Before she could respond, his hand found hers beneath the furs. His fingers were freezing, but his grip was gentle. Sleep, Revna. We have time for questions later. She shouldn't have been able to sleep, not with a stranger beside her, not with a curse hanging over both their heads, not with Seraphine's warning echoing in her mind. But somehow, impossibly, the cold that radiated from his body became almost comforting, like winter settling over the land. Harsh? Yes, but also clean, pure. When Revna finally drifted off, her hand was still wrapped in his. And she didn't dream of falling. She dreamed of ice. She woke to an empty bed and a single winter rose on the pillow beside her. White as snow, cold as his touch, but alive despite the frost. Revna pressed her fingers to the petals and smiled. The pattern established itself over the following weeks. Each night, Calder would come to her chambers after the castle had gone quiet. Each night, they would lie together beneath the firs, talking or sitting in comfortable silence, his cold presence becoming as familiar to her as her own heartbeat. He told her about the kingdom, about the constant threats from the Eastern territories, about the nobles who questioned his every decision, and the foreign dignitaries who sent their daughters in hopes of a more advantageous match. She told him about Ashvain, about her mother, who had died when she was young, about her father's remarriage to Seraphine's mother, a woman whose sweetness in public masked cruelty in private, about the winters of being made to feel like an intruder in her own home. They did not speak of the accident. Not yet. They did not speak of the seal on her blood or the curse that made him cold. But something was growing between them. Something that shouldn't exist in a contractual marriage. Something dangerous. On the 14th night, Calder arrived earlier than usual. "There's something I want to show you," he said. Before she could respond, he crossed to the bed and lifted her into his arms. That same effortless strength he'd shown at the claiming right. She was getting used to being carried by him, getting used to the solid press of his chest against her side, the way his cold arms somehow made her feel safer than any warmth ever had. "Where are we going?" "You'll see." He carried her through corridors she hadn't known existed, hidden passages behind tapestries, narrow stairs that wound deep into the mountain the castle was built upon. The air grew warmer as they descended, the frost on the walls giving way to bare stone slick with moisture. Finally, they emerged into a cavern. Revna gasped. Hot springs filled the space, steam rising from water that glowed faintly blue in the darkness. Crystals embedded in the cavern walls caught the light, scattering it like captured stars. It was beautiful, otherworldly, and utterly private. "I thought you might miss being warm," Calder said quietly. The thoughtfulness of it made her throat tight. "You brought me to a hot spring?" "I had servants prepare it. The water is heated by volcanic vents deep in the mountain. It's one of the few places in Valdrin where the cold can't reach." He set her down on a stone bench carved into the edge of the largest pool. Steam swirled around them both. "I'll leave you to stay." The word escaped before she could stop it. Calder froze, his colorless gaze searching her face. "Revna, I can't get into the water alone." It was true, but it wasn't the real reason she'd asked. "Help me, please." Something shifted in his expression, a wall crumbling, a decision being made. Slowly, he knelt beside her. His hands found the laces of her gown with careful precision. He didn't rush, didn't presume. Each movement was a question, and each time she nodded, he continued. The fabric fell away from her shoulders, pooling around her waist. Revna's breath came faster, but not from fear. From something else entirely. "You're beautiful," he murmured. "You can't even see me properly in this light." "I don't need light to know." He lifted her again, carrying her into the water with him. The heat was shocking after weeks of his constant cold, delicious and overwhelming and almost painful in its intensity. Revna moaned as the warmth enveloped her legs, soothing muscles that had forgotten what it felt like to be anything but numb. Calder held her against his chest, supporting her weight effortlessly. The water came up to her shoulders, but she could feel him beneath the surface, solid, strong, real. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "The heat?" "Yes." "Then why?" "Because you needed it." His voice was rough. "Because watching you shiver in that frozen room every night was destroying me." Revna's heart stuttered. She turned in his arms, awkwardly, since her legs wouldn't cooperate, until she was facing him. The steam had dampened his hair, making it curl slightly at the ends. Water droplets clung to his jaw, his throat, the sharp lines of his collarbones. "Calder. We shouldn't." His voice was strained. "The contract doesn't require—" "Forget the contract." She kissed him. His lips were cool even in the heated water, but they softened against hers instantly. For one heartbeat he was perfectly still. Then his arms tightened around her, one hand coming up to cup the back of her head, and he kissed her back with a hunger that stole her breath. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was the kiss of a man who had been starving for something he'd forbidden himself to want. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, his forehead pressed against hers. "This is dangerous," he whispered. "You don't understand what you're risking." "Then tell me." His eyes met hers, and she saw it. The fear beneath the ice. The desperate, aching longing that matched her own. "Not yet," he said. "Not tonight. Tonight I just want—" He didn't finish. He didn't need to. They stayed in the hot spring until the water began to cool, exploring each other with hands and mouths and whispered words. He learned the curve of her waist, the hollow of her throat, the small sounds she made when his cold lips found warm skin. She learned the scars on his back, 4 parallel lines where his youngest brother had clawed him during the final moments of the curse, desperate and dying, and the way his breath hitched when she traced them. They didn't complete the union that night, but what they shared felt more intimate than any physical claiming could have been. Afterward, wrapped in warmed furs in a small chamber adjoining the springs, Revna lay against his chest and listened to his heartbeat. It was slower than a normal wolf's, as if even his heart had been touched by frost. "Calder? I think I might be falling in love with you." His entire body went rigid. The winter that bled from his skin intensified sharply, enough to make her gasp. She pulled back to look at his face and found his expression twisted with something that looked horribly like fear. "Don't," he said. His voice cracked on the word. "Revna, please, don't love me." "Why?" But he was already pulling away, already withdrawing behind those walls of ice. "I need to go," he said abruptly. "I'll send servants to return you to your chambers." "Calder, wait." He was gone before she could finish. Revna sat alone in the cooling chamber, her skin still tingling from his touch, her heart aching from his absence. And for the first time since the accident, she felt something stir in her legs. A warmth, a pulse, a flicker of something that had been dead for 3 long winters. She stared down at her motionless limbs, her breath catching in her throat. Had she imagined it? The following weeks became a delicate dance of approach and retreat. Calder still came to her chambers each night, but something had changed. He was careful now, controlled. He held her hand but didn't kiss her. Lay beside her but kept distance between their bodies, as if he was afraid of what might happen if he let himself get too close. Revna didn't push. She had seen the fear in his eyes that night in the hot spring. Whatever secret he was keeping, it terrified him. And she was learning that this cold, powerful king was far more fragile than he appeared. But the feeling in her legs didn't go away. It came in flickers at first, a tingle when Calder touched her, a pulse of warmth when she thought about him. Then it grew stronger. Sometimes, late at night, she could almost swear she felt her toes. She didn't tell him. Didn't tell anyone. The seal on her blood was supposed to keep her paralyzed. If something was changing, if the seal was weakening, she didn't know what would emerge. One evening, she was sitting by the fire when Calder arrived earlier than expected. His face was pale, paler than usual, and there was frost in his hair that hadn't melted. "I need to tell you something," he said without preamble. Revna's heart clenched. "What is it?" He crossed to where she sat and knelt before her chair, taking her hands in his. The cold of his touch was sharper than ever, burning against her skin. "I've been lying to you." "About what?" "About why I chose you. About the curse. About everything." He took a shaking breath. Revna had never seen him like this. Vulnerable. Exposed. The walls of ice crumbling away to reveal the wounded man beneath. "My family didn't die in an accident 5 winters ago," he said quietly. "They were killed. By me." The words landed like physical blows. "I don't understand," she whispered. "There's a curse on my bloodline. An ancient curse. placed generations ago by a witch who was wronged by my ancestors. His grip on her hands tightened. The men of my family cannot love. We are forbidden from it. If we ever truly fall in love, the curse activates. What happens? We freeze from the inside out. Our hearts turn to ice. We die. He laughed bitterly. Slowly, painfully, and with full awareness of exactly what we've done to ourselves. Revna's blood ran cold. Your family. My father fell in love with my mother after 20 winters of marriage. The curse took him in 3 days. My brothers watched it happen and panicked. They each had women they cared for. Each tried to end those attachments before it was too late. His voice broke. They failed. Tears were streaming down Revna's face. You watched them all die. I was 19. I held my youngest brother as the frost covered his heart. He was 17. He had only just fallen in love for the first time. The grief in his voice was ancient, endless, a wound that would never heal. I swore that day that I would never let myself love anyone, Calder continued, that I would choose a mate purely for politics, for heirs, for duty, someone I couldn't possibly develop feelings for. His frost-gray eyes lifted to meet hers. And then I saw you on that platform, broken and beautiful and fierce despite everything. And I thought, she's perfect. She's damaged enough that I'll never be able to love her. She'll be safe. I'll be safe. His hands trembled against hers. I was wrong. Revna's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear her own voice. Calder, what are you saying? I'm saying that every night I've spent with you has been a battle. I'm saying that when you kissed me in that hot spring, something cracked inside me that I can't put back together. I'm saying... He stopped. His face contorted with pain. I'm saying that I think I'm falling in love with you, Revna, and it's going to kill me. No. The word burst out of her. No. There has to be a way to break it. Curses can be broken. Seals can be... She froze. Seals. Calder. Her voice shook. The seal on me. What if it's connected? What if whoever cursed your family also... That's impossible. But doubt flickered in his eyes. The curse was placed centuries ago. You're only... I don't know what I am. Revna gripped his hands tighter. I don't know why I was sealed or by whom, or what happens if the seal breaks. But I know that ever since we've been together, I've started feeling things. In my legs. Things that should be impossible. Calder went very still. What kind of things? Warmth. Pulses. Like something is waking up inside me. She leaned forward urgently. What if the curse and the seal are linked? What if breaking one breaks the other? What if... His eyes widened. And then he screamed. The sound was unlike anything she'd ever heard. Raw agony torn from the depths of a man who had trained himself never to show weakness. His hand spasmed around hers, then released as he collapsed backward onto the floor. Calder! Revna tried to move, tried to go to him, but her legs refused to cooperate. Calder! He was convulsing on the stones, frost spreading across his chest, climbing his throat, coating his face in a mask of ice. His eyes were wide open, fixed on the ceiling, filled with terror. Guards! Revna screamed. Someone help! But even as footsteps thundered in the corridor, even as servants burst through the door and chaos erupted around her, Revna knew the truth. Calder Vorn, Alpha King of Valdrin, was dying, and she was the reason why. The healers couldn't touch him. Every time they reached for the Alpha King, the cold that radiated from his body burned their hands like frostbite. Frost crept across the floor around him, turning the stone white, making the air so frigid that breath came out in thick clouds. Revna had been lifted into a chair by the servants, positioned helplessly at the edge of the room while chaos swirled around her. She watched the healers argue, watched them gesture frantically at the spreading ice, Watch them shake their heads with the grim certainty of men who knew they were watching a king die. There's nothing we can do, the head healer finally admitted. The curse is too advanced. If we had caught it sooner, perhaps. But now, no. The word tore out of Revna's throat. No, I refuse to accept that. She gripped the arms of her chair and pulled herself forward, ignoring the shocked gasps of the servants. Her legs dragged behind her as she half crawled, half pulled herself across the frost-covered floor toward where Calder lay motionless. My lady, you cannot. Don't touch me. She reached him. His skin was white as marble now, frost coating his eyelashes, his lips blue with cold. But his chest still rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths. He was alive. Barely. Calder. She gripped his frozen hand, ignoring the burning cold. Calder, can you hear me? His eyes fluttered open. The pale gray had been nearly consumed by white, like ice spreading across a winter lake. But there was still recognition in them. Still him. Revna. His voice cracked like breaking ice. You need to leave. The cold will spread to you. It will. I'm not leaving you. The curse takes everyone I love. A tear slid down his frozen cheek, turning to ice before it reached his jaw. I've watched it happen. I won't watch it take you too. Then don't watch. She squeezed his hand tighter. Close your eyes and trust me. There's nothing you can do. There's no cure. The witch who cast this curse made certain of that. Only someone of her bloodline could break it. And she had no children. No descendants. The curse was designed to be eternal. Revna's mind raced. The seal on her blood. The power that someone had locked away. The feeling that had been returning to her legs ever since she met Calder. What was her name? She demanded. The witch who cursed your family. What was her name? Calder's brow furrowed weakly. Why does that? Her name. Calder. Morven. The word came out as barely a whisper. Morven of the Ashvane territory. Ashvane. Revna's blood turned to ice colder than any curse. That's my territory, she breathed. I'm from Ashvane. My mother was from Ashvane. My mother's mother was from... She stopped. Her mother's mother. Her grandmother. A woman she had never met, who had died long before Revna was born. The women in her line had carried the name for generations, a tradition stretching back centuries to the original Morven herself. Her mother had spoken it only once, in a fever dream near the end of her life. You carry her blood, she had whispered. You carry Morven's fire. Oh gods. Revna's hands were shaking. Calder, I think. I think I might be her descendant. His eyes widened despite the frost consuming them. That's impossible. Is it? She leaned closer, her voice urgent. The original witch had no children that anyone knew of. But what if she did? What if she hid them to protect them from your family's retribution? What if the bloodline survived in secret, passed down through daughters who never knew what they were? If that were true, you would have power, magic, something. I do have something. Revna's voice broke. That's what the seal is for. Someone locked it away. Someone who knew what I was and wanted to make sure I could never use it. Calder stared at her, comprehension dawning in his frozen gaze. The accident, he whispered. It wasn't an accident. No. Tears streamed down her face. I don't think it was. His hand tightened weakly around hers. Then break it. Break the seal. If you really are Morven's descendant, if you really have the power to end this curse. I don't know how. The admission was agony. I don't know who sealed me or why or how to undo it. I don't even know what's inside me. Then find out. His voice was fading, the frost climbing higher. Find out before it's too late. Not for me. I'm already lost. But for yourself. For whoever did this to you. I won't let you die. You don't have a choice. There's always a choice. She bent down and kissed him. His lips were ice against hers, burning cold that seared her skin. But she didn't pull away. She poured everything she felt into that kiss, every moment they'd shared, every whispered conversation in the dark, every touch that had made her feel alive again for the first time in 3 winters. And deep inside her, something responded. Heat. Blazing, impossible heat, erupting from a place she hadn't known existed. It raced through her veins like wildfire, burning through her chest, her arms, her legs. Revna gasped and broke the kiss, looking down at her body. Light was glowing beneath her skin, golden and warm, pulsing with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. "What's happening?" one of the healers shouted. The light grew brighter, the heat grew stronger, and for the first time in 3 winters, Revna felt her legs. Not just warmth, not just tingles. She felt them, truly felt them. The muscles, the bones, the nerves that had been dead for so long finally screaming back to life. The seal was breaking. "Revna!" Calder's eyes were wide with wonder and terror. "What are you—" But before she could answer, the light exploded outward in a blinding flash. When it faded, Revna was still kneeling beside him, her legs still motionless, the glow gone as quickly as it had come. And standing in the doorway, face twisted with fury, was her stepmother. "I told Seraphine to watch you," the woman hissed. "I told her to make sure this never happened. But you just couldn't stay broken, could you?" Revna's blood ran cold for an entirely different reason. "You," she breathed. "It was you. You did this to me." Her stepmother smiled, and it was the coldest thing in the room. "Of course it was me, you foolish girl. Who else had access to your food? Your medicine? Your healer?" "The healer." Revna's voice shook. "The one who treated me after the accident. She worked for you." "Worked for me? She is me." The woman's form shimmered, twisted, and for one horrible moment, Revna saw the truth beneath the mask, a face she recognized from her worst memories. "Did you really think I was just some bitter noblewoman who married your father for his money? I've been watching your family for 3 generations, waiting for one of you to manifest the gift. And when you did, you sealed it." Revna's fists clenched. "You paralyzed me to keep me powerless. I paralyzed you to keep the curse intact." Her stepmother's eyes blazed. "Do you have any idea what your bloodline represents? The original Morven was my mentor, my mother figure. I've spent centuries protecting her legacy, making sure no Wolf King would ever be free of the price they owed for what they did to her." She stepped forward, and cold power radiated from her, not like Calder's curse, but something older, darker. "I won't let you destroy everything she built, everything I've maintained. If I have to kill you both to preserve it, so be it." Revna had no power, no strength, no working legs. But she had rage. "You took everything from me," she said quietly. "My legs, my wolf, my life. And now you want to take him too? He was never meant to find love." Her stepmother circled closer, dark energy crackling around her fingers. "None of them were. That was the point. The original Morven cursed them to suffer as she suffered, to lose everyone they loved, as she lost everything when the first king murdered her mate and stole her lands. So you've been torturing innocent people for centuries to avenge a dead woman's grudge?" "Innocent?" The witch laughed. "The Vorn bloodline is soaked in blood. They've conquered, killed, and destroyed everything in their path. They deserve every moment of suffering." "And what about me?" Revna's voice rose. "What did I do to deserve being trapped in a broken body for 3 winters? What did I do to deserve losing everything I was?" "You had the misfortune of being born." The witch raised her hand, dark energy gathering. "And now you'll have the misfortune of dying." She hurled the power forward. Revna threw herself over Calder's body, expecting pain, expecting death, expecting the end of everything. Instead, she felt heat. The golden light erupted from her again, stronger than before. It met the dark energy mid-air and shattered it like glass. The witch screamed, stumbling backward, her face twisted with disbelief. Impossible. The seal should hold. The seal. Your seal broke the moment I chose to die for him. Revna didn't know where the knowledge came from, but as she spoke the words, she felt their truth resonating in her bones. That's how Morven's magic works, isn't it? That's what she really cursed them with. Not the inability to love, the inability to be loved in return, the inability to have someone sacrifice for them. But I just did. She pulled herself upright, and this time, impossibly, miraculously, her legs moved with her. Not smoothly, not gracefully, but they moved. No. The witch's voice cracked with panic. No, this cannot. You spent so long making sure I could never walk. You forgot what would happen if someone gave me a reason to. Revna stood. It was agony. Every muscle screamed, every nerve burned with 3 winters of dormant fire suddenly blazing back to life. Her knees buckled, but she caught herself against the bedpost, refusing to fall. You took my legs to keep me weak, but you made a mistake. She took a step, then another. You gave me time to learn what really mattered. You gave me time to understand what I was willing to die for. Another step. She was crossing the room now, each footfall more certain than the last. The golden light surrounded her like armor, like wings, like the power of every ancestor who had come before her. And now I'm going to end this. Not just for him. For everyone your curse has ever touched. The witch hurled another blast of dark energy. Revna raised her hand and caught it. The power burned, but she held on. Morven's blood flows in my veins, Revna said. Her gift. Her magic. But I'm not her. And I refuse to be her legacy. She turned the captured energy back on the witch, adding her own golden fire to it. The explosion was blinding. When the light cleared, her stepmother lay crumpled on the floor, the dark power drained from her completely. She looked old now, ancient, withered, her true age finally showing after centuries of magical preservation. This isn't over, the witch gasped. The curse. Even if you save him, it will pass to your children, to their children, forever. No. Revna knelt beside her, the golden light still burning in her palms. Morven's curse dies with you. I can feel it. The seal you put on me. It was linked to everything else. When it broke all of it. She placed her glowing hand on the witch's chest. I could kill you. I have every right. After everything you've done, everyone you've hurt. The witch's eyes widened with fear. But I'm not going to. Revna pulled her hand back. You're going to live. You're going to live as a mortal, without power, without magic, knowing that everything you spent centuries building has been destroyed by the very bloodline you tried to erase. She rose to her feet, her own feet, standing without support for the first time in 3 winters. Take her to the dungeons, she commanded the guards who had gathered in the doorway. She'll stand trial for her crimes against the crown. As the guards dragged the witch away, Revna turned back to Calder. The frost was receding. Color was returning to his cheeks. His eyes were open, clear gray once again, fixed on her with an expression of pure wonder. You're standing, he breathed. I'm standing. You broke the curse. I broke everything. She crossed to him and knelt beside the bed, taking his warming hands in hers. The curse, the seal, all of it. It's over, Calder. You're free. He reached up and touched her face with trembling fingers. You could have died. That power. You had no idea how to control it. You could have. I would have died 1,000 times to save you. His eyes filled with tears. Warm tears. Liquid tears. no longer turning to ice on his cheeks. "I love you," he said. "I couldn't say it before. I was too afraid. But I love you, Revna. I've loved you since the moment I saw you on that platform, refusing to be pitied, refusing to be broken. I love you too." She leaned forward and kissed him. His lips were warm now, soft, alive. When they finally broke apart, they were both crying. "What happens now?" she whispered. Calder smiled, a real smile, bright and unguarded, the kind she had never seen on his face before. "Now we live, together, as we were always meant to." 6 months later, spring came to Valdrin for the first time in living memory. Not just in the calendar, not just in the turning of the seasons, but in the land itself. Snow melting from slopes that had been frozen for generations, flowers pushing through soil that hadn't seen sun in centuries, rivers running free where ice had dammed them for longer than anyone could remember. The curse was truly broken. Revna stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, watching the transformation with wonder. Behind her, she could hear Calder dressing for the day's ceremonies, humming softly under his breath. He hummed now, laughed now, touched her with warm hands and kissed her with warm lips, and looked at her like she had personally hung the moon in the sky. It still made her heart skip every time. "The delegation from Ashvane has arrived," he said, coming to stand behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Your sister is with them." "Seraphine?" Revna tensed slightly. "No. Your other sister, Marin." Ah, the half-sister she had barely known, born before the witch had entered their lives, kept isolated for winters as another victim of the woman who had infiltrated their family. Now she was free. They all were. Seraphine had been exiled to the southern territories, stripped of her family name, but spared imprisonment. Revna had argued for mercy despite everything. Some chains she had learned were forged by lies rather than malice. Her stepsister had been as much a pawn as anyone. "Is Marin nervous?" Revna asked. "Terrified." Calder pressed a kiss to her temple. "But she wanted to come. She wanted to meet the sister she was never allowed to know." Revna smiled. "Then we shouldn't keep her waiting." She turned in his arms, rising on her toes to kiss him properly. Her legs were still stiff some mornings, still ached when the weather turned cold. But they worked. They were hers again, and every step she took was a reminder of what she had survived. "The council wants to discuss the new laws today," Calder murmured against her lips. "The ones protecting magic bearers from persecution. Good. It's long overdue. They're calling it the Revna Accords." She pulled back, staring at him. "They're what?" His smile was pure mischief. "You shattered a centuries-old curse, exposed a conspiracy that had corrupted multiple noble houses, and somehow managed to not die in the process. They wanted to name something after you. I just wanted to save you. And you did." He cupped her face in his hands, always warm now. "You saved me, you saved my kingdom, and you saved everyone who would have suffered under that curse for generations to come." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "My queen, my mate, my everything." Revna leaned into his touch, feeling the mate bond pulse between them, strong, unbreakable, and finally complete. "We should go meet my sister," she said reluctantly. "We should." Neither of them moved. 5 more minutes?" he suggested. She laughed. 5 more minutes." They stood together on the balcony as spring bloomed across the kingdom of Valdrin, 2 broken people who had found each other in the dark and walked into the light together. And somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Revna's wolf, finally awakened after 3 silent winters, singing its joy to the morning sky. They had both been shattered. They had both been saved. And their story was only beginning.